The United States is proposing a ban on electric vehicles and connected car tech from China, while the European Union is set to decide today on hiking tariffs.
You know, look, if there was going to be a trade war, I can tell you, Jessica, the markets wouldn't really like it.
So when will the trade war end? The trade war may never end.
Thank you for joining me today. I'm Najma Minhas. The European Union just got pummeled in the face by China today. Just as we were absorbing the news about French protests over the Chinese tariffs on Cognac, a French drink, news came out from Reuters that an official source told them that China's told its major automakers to halt big investment in European countries that supported the extra tariffs on Chinese-built electric vehicles. The European Union dropped this hammer on Chinese electric vehicle makers with massive tariffs up to 45.3%, which went into place today on Wednesday. And the fallout is happening fast. China's not taking this lying down. It's retaliating with its own economic measures. This trade war is set to impact not just Europe and China, but could reshape global trade in ways we haven't seen in years. Now, for all the dislike many European leaders had and have for the isolationist America First President Donald Trump, he lit a fire in 2018 with the tariffs, and the Europeans have jumped on board with more oil of their own. Ironically, he's promising across-the-board tariffs this time round, and when he comes into power, and that will affect the Europeans as well. So they shouldn't get too happy with this tariff monopoly game that they've continued playing.
You're talking about 60% tariffs on Chinese goods. Is that in the cards?
No, I would say maybe it's going to be more than that.
Also, in another shocking twist, Volkswagen, the German automotive giant, has announced the temporary closure of several of its factories in Germany, and it cited disruptions caused by the European-imposed Chinese EV tariffs and the ripple effects throughout the global supply chain having impacted it. The company has, since the beginning of the year, been warning that it is in dire straits and it will potentially have to close plants in Germany. The company wants to permanently close 3 factories, implement a 10% pay cut across the board and cut thousands of jobs.
Verunsichert natürlich ganz viele Menschen, weil das elementar die Zukunft in Frage stellt und wie es dann hier halt weitergeht.
Volkswagen passenger car CEO Thomas Schaffer has said that operations cannot continue as before. Volkswagen currently has over 10 plants and 300,000 employees in Germany. Schaffer calls a spade when he says, "We have to get to the root of the problems. We're not productive enough at our German sites, and our factory costs are currently 25 to 50% above target. This means that some of our German plants are twice as expensive as our competitors." Please do like, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying the content on this channel. Your engagement helps the channel to grow. Earlier this year, the European Commission set out extra tariffs ranging from 7.8% for Tesla cars to 35.3% for China's cars, such as SAIC. On top of this, the European standard has a standard 10% car import duty as well. So that's where the 45.3% on Chinese vehicles comes into play. This came into effect today. The Commission, which oversees the EU trade policy, has said that the tariffs are required to counter what it says are unfair Chinese subsidies to its automakers, which includes preferential financing and grants, as well as land, batteries, and raw materials at below market prices, they claim. And it blames the Chinese for making too many cars, too many electric vehicle cars, and says that China's spare production capacity of 3 million electric vehicles per year is twice the size of the EU market.
European Union member states have narrowly backed import duties on Chinese-made electric cars over what the EU considers to be unfair competition. Chinese car manufacturers have slammed the EU's move.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Not all of Europe agrees on these tariffs. EU tariffs were supported by 10 countries, including France, Poland, and Italy. But Germany and Hungary pushed back. Why? Well, because Germany has massive stakes in the automotive industry, and they know that this will not only hurt China, it will hurt them too. Germany has a huge market in cars in China worth over 6 billion. So China producing cheap EV cars is a problem for the so-called planet-loving, tree-hugging Europeans only when their own industries are being affected. 25% of their greenhouse gas emissions comes from the transportation sector, and they are seriously lagging on meeting their net zero carbon emissions target and desperately need to move towards EV cars. I did a vlog earlier on the Western hypocrisy over electric vehicle cars, and I will put a link to it. Please do watch it. The reality is China is making great cars at cheap prices and is giving kittens to the Europeans. Ford CEO recently had his very own Chinese car flown into Detroit. It's a Xiaomi brand for $30,000, which he's been driving for the past 6 months to understand his competitors, he says. And he's announced he loves it and he doesn't want to give it up.
I don't like talking about the competition so much, but I drive the Xiaomi. We flew one from Shanghai to Chicago, and I've been driving it for 6 months now, and I don't want to give it up.
Right. Wow. That's an extraordinary thing to say, isn't it?
So what is China's response? China automakers like BYD and SAIC are now rethinking their investments in Europe. In fact, according to the Reuters source, China has told these automakers to freeze their plans to build new factories in the country that supported the tariffs. And here's where the curveball comes in. BYD is already building a plant in Hungary, one of the countries that opposed the tariffs. So don't be surprised if we see more of these strategic moves as China looks to protect its market. There is no wonder that the Hungarian Prime Minister has said that Europe is engaging in an economic Cold War. They've also hit back, China that is, at one of Europe's most iconic exports, French whiskey. Now, France, which was one of the key supporters of these tariffs, is suddenly in a tough spot. French whiskey exports to China are worth $1.7 billion. China is the second biggest export market for the French cognac sector after the United States, and they sell around 61 million bottles there last year in 2023. And now with these new tariffs on whiskey and other products, French producers are feeling the pinch, and that's not alone. China's also opened an anti-subsidy probe into the imported EU dairy products in August this year, and an investigation focusing on pork intended for human consumption was opened in June. Over $1.5 billion pork imports go from Spain alone to China. And the Spanish Minister for Economy and Trade, Carlos Cuerpo, has said that the EU needs to keep negotiating with China to avoid an escalation of these protectionist measures that in the end provide for a lose-lose situation. The trade war is escalating fast and no one's safe. The imposition of tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles by the European Union is part of a broader trend of rising global protectionism in recent years, which is marking one of the most significant tariff measures in the automotive sector. Now, although this is not the first instance of tariff protections being enacted, it is amongst one of the most notable in the context of the electric vehicle market itself. It's an industry which is central to global efforts to reducing carbon emissions. Tariffs against China, which took off during the former President Trump's tenure, were continued under Biden presidency, where earlier this year they announced that tariffs on EV vehicles would increase up to 100%. President Trump has already said that when he comes in, he will double those. However, the scale and the timing of the current EU tariffs against China is in a time of increasing geopolitical and economic rivalry, and it signals a potential escalation in global trade disputes. Now let's talk about the bigger picture. Global trade is already in a fragile state, with economic growth slowing to over 2.7% in 2023. And these kind of protectionist moves like the EU's EV tariffs could push us all into a more economic trouble. Tariffs increase the cost of imports, they disrupt the supply chains, they prompt retaliatory actions. I'm not going to let you attack me, but without me attacking you back, as we saw with China's response to the EU tariffs. Experts are already warning that this could cut Chinese EV sales in Europe by as much as 30%. Now, in terms of the economic impact, the automotive sector is particularly vulnerable. The EU's decision to impose these tariffs on Chinese EVs could significantly impact China's ability to compete in Europe, where Chinese EV brands such as BYD, SAIC, and Geely have already been gaining massive market share. Now, according to industry estimates, Chinese EV exports to Europe were valued at approximately 7 billion in 2022. And some analysts believe that the tariffs could cut these Chinese EV sales by 20 to 30% in the next coming years. This not only affects European consumers by limiting competition and potentially increasing the cost of EVs, which are critical to Europe's transition to a greener transportation. Now, to put all this in perspective, let's talk about numbers. Chinese electric vehicles, brands like BYD, Geely, and SAIC, are priced as low as $20,000. Compare that to European models like Volkswagen's ID.3, which starts at $40,000, and the American EVs like Tesla, which starts around $45,000. And the only reason these prices have been reduced so much is because of the Chinese competition. Now, you can see why European automakers are feeling the pressure. Beyond the automotive industry, the broader impact of protectionism could affect other sectors reliant on global trade as well. The EU and China are key trading partners, with the trade between them totaling around 700 billion euros in 2022. And if retaliatory tariffs continue to escalate, other industries such as electronics, renewable energy, and agriculture could also start to face disruption. Historically, large-scale protectionist measures which have led to trade wars can lower global economic output, as we saw in the 1930s. For example, the US-China trade war in 2018 is estimated to have reduced global GDP by 0.1 to 0.2%, with certain sectors in both countries suffering significant job losses and decreased revenues. This growing protectionism will lead to a more fragmented global trade environment, where countries increasingly resort to tariffs made in Asia, made in India, made in China, made in the United States type local production to shield the domestic industries from international competition. How effective that is, how many jobs come back, is yet to be seen. But history also shows not many jobs get saved. History has taught us that when free trade exists, it fuels global economic growth, and we all benefit from it. So what does this mean for the future of the electric vehicles? Well, the race for dominance in the EV market is, as we know, heating up. Chinese automakers are set to flood the European markets with affordable EVs to some extent. But now with these tariffs, we can see them shifting focus to maybe different markets like Eastern Europe or even Southeast Asia. It is a global chess game, and every move counts. So this trade war is far from over, and the stakes are only getting higher. With factory closures, retaliatory tariffs, the escalating tensions, the future of this global EV market is in a serious flux. But one thing's for sure, this is going to affect all of us. Whether you're looking to buy your next EV or you're just paying attention to your country's economy, it's going to affect us all. Thank you for giving me your time today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do share, subscribe to the channel, and do give me your thoughts in the comments. Do you think these tariffs will do more harm than good? Do you think jobs will be created? Will Volkswagen be not able to close down those factories that it might be forced to do otherwise? Let's discuss.